indisputable is that this administration has chosen an economic course, this enormous increase in tariffs, which pretty much every economist will tell you is completely self-defeating. Whatever you hear, this is a tax on consumers. It's likely to push the economy into recession. But more important than that is that it is eroding investors' faith in the dollar. And the dollar is the absolute...
One administration, one catastrophic decision, and now the world is bracing for impact. As the tariffs bite harder, the American economy bleeds, and the global stage watches in shock. The so-called strong economy crumbling, the once infallible dollar shaken to its core. Welcome back to the channel that gives you the no-spin, no-nonsense breakdowns they don't want you to hear. Subscribe now, because when the truth hits this hard, you can't afford to miss it. It all started with a sudden, staggering shift in leadership and priorities. As captured in the transcript when asked about the dramatic change in America's standing, the Economist editor laid it out clearly.
Well, the administration has changed, and we have a new administration engaged in a revolutionary project to remake America's foreign policy, to completely transform its economy, to attack independent institutions, law firms, universities, the Federal Reserve Chairman, and that's led to massive...
The world was watching America not with admiration, but with worry, skepticism, and doubt. And the flashpoint, tariffs. Crushing, self-inflicted economic tariffs that sent shockwaves across every sector. When pressed about the administration's economic moves over the last 100 days, hesitation filled the room. Even Ray Dalio, a titan in the financial world, couldn't mask the messy reality.
The last 100 days economically.
The effects of those policies economically is to bring to the surface issues about the polarity that exists. And at the same time, it's doing it in a volatile way that is causing trouble in terms of the volatility.
He tried to spin it gently, suggesting the administration was merely dealing with problems, but had to admit
is the way it is dealing with problems could be done more smoothly, more cooperatively to produce a less volatile result.
Zanny, let me ask...
Translation, even those sympathetic to the administration's broader goals couldn't ignore the amateur hour execution. What could have been handled with precision and consensus building turned into chaotic economic shock therapy. The defense was weak, unconvincing, and even their own experts struggled to sugarcoat the carnage unfolding in real time. And then came the blunt truth. Cold, undeniable, and catastrophic. The tariffs weren't a strategic masterstroke. They were, as plainly stated, a massive self-inflicted wound. The Economist editor didn't pull any punches.
Absolutely. I mean, this has been the single biggest tariff increase in history. US tariffs, as you say, were around 2%. They went above 20%. They're well above 20% now. It's a tenfold increase. And Ray is an expert.
That's right. From a minor 2% to a brutal 20% plus. A jaw-dropping escalation that left America battered. And it wasn't just about higher prices or isolated industries suffering. The very foundation of the US's global economic dominance, the strength of the dollar, began to crumble.
Whatever you hear, this is a tax on consumers. It's likely to push the economy into recession. But more important than that, is that it is eroding investors' faith in the dollar. And the dollar is the absolute...
In just a few short months, America's once stable economic system started resembling a volatile emerging market. Stock markets falling, bond yields rising, dollar value collapsing, and worst of all, as the editor warned,
necessarily going to happen, but there's an uncomfortably high risk that we have a serious dollar crisis as investors move out secularly of US assets. And that would be catastrophic, even...
A dollar crisis. The nightmare scenario that could obliterate not just America's economy, but destabilize the entire world financial system. And why? Because of reckless tariffs. A wrong medicine that instead of curing America's problems was poisoning its future. If you thought it couldn't get worse, brace yourself. Because the real bombshell wasn't just about tariffs or a slowing economy. It was about the very survival of the US financial system. Zanny Minton Beddoes, editor-in-chief of The Economist, didn't mince words.
What is seriously dangerous right now, we could at some point, and I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen, but there's an uncomfortably high risk that we have a serious dollar crisis as investors move out secularly of US assets. And that would be catastrophic, even
A serious dollar crisis. The dollar isn't just America's currency, it's the backbone of the entire world economy. It's what global markets trust when everything else collapses. Yet now, thanks to reckless policies, global investors were backing away from US assets. Stocks were tumbling, bond prices were falling, and even the dollar itself was under siege. And as Beddoes warned,
less than the impact of this enormous tariff increase. And frankly, all of that is to me the wrong medicine for the problems that the US has. I happen to think the US economy is in much better shape.
in short, America didn't just trip, it took a chainsaw to its own legs, and the fallout wouldn't be contained inside US borders. It threatened to unleash global economic chaos. As the debate wound down, any hope of a positive spin evaporated. Even those who tried to defend the administration's economic strategies ended up admitting the unavoidable truth. Zanny Minton Beddoes dropped the final hammer.
For the problems that the US has. I happen to think the US economy is in much better shape than many people do. But with this self-inflicted wound, it is really hurting itself and causing potentially enormous damage to the rest of the world too.
Let's be crystal clear, even optimists about America's economic fundamentals were forced to concede that the administration's trade war was sabotaging its own recovery, and dragging down the global economy with it. When the dollar crumbles, when investments flee, when everyday Americans pay the price at checkout lines and in lost jobs, remember how we got here. Not through inevitability, through choice, through reckless, needless policy blunders that experts warned about and that leaders ignored. If you're tired of the spin and ready for the hard truth, hit that subscribe button now, because when the next shoe drops, you'll want to be the first to know.